In 2026, most physical therapists are struggling to break six figures, and for the first 3 years of my PT career, I was no different. But in year 4, I made one change that quickly catapulted my personal income past $200,000. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through my story from graduating the #1 DPT school in the country and being paid just $16.53 per patient and outpatient to making just one pivot that moved my annual income over $200,000 and how you can make that exact same change. So I'll start this story with graduation day at the #1 ranked DPT program in the country, the University of Southern California. So in my final internship, I worked at a really cool outpatient clinic. We saw NBA, NFL, every actor in Los Angeles. Like, this was the place to be. And when I graduated, I was super excited. They gave me an offer. Unfortunately, the offer was, I think, $68,000, which just was not going to cut my lifestyle at the time. So I ended up taking a director position at a workers' comp clinic, making $80,000. It was a bit insulting because as a new grad DPT, I jumped over the PT who had been there, I think, 18 years for that director position. So I was making $80,000 at that offer. Unfortunately, just after a couple months, I kind of came to the conclusion, which is kind of the stigma in workers' comp setting. A lot of the patients were faking or exaggerating their symptoms, I felt like. The other thing I really didn't like about that clinic was it didn't matter what time the person was scheduled. If they had a 10 a.m. appointment and they showed up at 3 p.m., they would say, "Bring her back." And we had to see the patient. Also, for every patient, there were certain modalities we had to do that I just didn't feel super ethical about, and I didn't really think it was gonna move the needle in their care. So after just 6 months, I left that position. Now, my next move I thought I'd really enjoy, but it put me in that classic overworked, underpaid story that most physical therapists fall into. And this part of my story is really typically what I talk about. So I started at an outpatient sports medicine clinic with 2 orthopedic surgeons. They gave me the same annual salary of $80,000, and I thought I had it made because I was able to negotiate a $2,000 raise up to $82K. Now, I was expected to see up to 20 patients a day at that clinic, and if you do that math, that equates to $16.53 per patient. Now, at first, I really liked that clinic. Cool patient population. We were seeing post-surgical patients. I was working directly with surgeons. It was a new facility. I was enjoying it. But very quickly, like I said, I fell into that overworked, underpaid story that almost all these outpatient physical therapists are falling into. And it really hit home for me when I saw my manager, who had 10 plus years more experience than me, open up an envelope with her Christmas bonus gift in it, and she started crying because it was such a small, insulting number. And at that moment, I looked into the future, and I knew if I changed nothing and I stayed in outpatient, that would be me in 10 years. So in that moment, I knew that I had to make a change, and my next move was the one that really changed everything for me. So I went on to Craigslist. I may be dating myself if you don't know what that is, and I found my first home health position. So I took my first patient. I will never forget him. I remember the street he lived on. I remember what the apartment looked like, and he was actually a really difficult case. He was a really tiny Russian gentleman, and he was a brand new amputee. It was a difficult case, but right away, I saw the opportunity in home health. I liked working with this patient, and I knew if I could handle this really difficult case that I'd be able to handle really whatever home health threw at me. So that next day, basically, I went into my outpatient job, I put in my 2-week notice, and I started going into home health. When I got into home health, I had no training. I thought the agencies were going to spend a long time teaching me the rules, the regulations, the notes, everything I needed to know. But unfortunately, every time I signed up with one of the home health agencies, they'd spend 10 minutes teaching me how to document in their software, and then they'd kick my butt out the door and they'd say, "Go see our patients." And that's why that first year, if I'm being real, was pretty dang brutal. Every day, those agencies were calling me, screaming at me because I was doing things wrong, but yet they wouldn't take the time to invest into me and really teach me all these things that I needed to know. Now, despite all that, I was able to make over $100,000 my first year as a home health therapist. I was making good money, but I hadn't broken the $200,000 a year yet. I was contracted with several big agencies, and I was covering a really huge territory in Los Angeles. And if you know anything about Los Angeles, the traffic is terrible and it's really hard to drive around. Since I was a little kid, I've always been into cars. I grew up in a car family. And so to me, the sign that I had made it was that I would buy myself a really nice car, and I wanted to do that before my 30th birthday. And so I was able to do that. I bought this beautiful handmade white Maserati Gran Turismo Sport white interior leather. I mean, it was a really beautiful car. And that was the car that I drove around seeing patients. I was definitely the only physical therapist driving any car like that. And I have one specific memory in that car where one day I was getting off the highway, I was turning left to go home, and my odometer clicked to 100 miles for that day. And in Los Angeles, 100 miles is insane with the traffic. And so that night, I knew I had to create the company and I had to hire a lot of therapists. And that's exactly what I did. I started hiring therapists so that they could cover all these areas, and it didn't have to be me personally seeing all the patients. And that was the secret, which was making the company, hiring therapists, and bringing on more agencies to give them patients. That is how I built the company, and that is how my income was able to increase. I won't say it wasn't a grind in the beginning, because it was, but it's fulfilling when it's your own company and you're making real money. You know, I used to go out with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. We would stay out late. I would wake up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. My desk was right next to the bed she'd still be sleeping in, and I'd be working. But I was happy to do it because it was my own company, and I was actually having fun and enjoying building it. Now, that first full year, the company made $344,000, and my personal income was now over $200,000. Now, fast forward a decade, I recently sold that company after it collected over $13 million. I contracted over 300 home health agencies, and I hired and mentored over 650 therapists. Home health was the setting that gave me financial freedom, and creating a business is what pushed my personal income over $200,000 and gave me the time freedom to travel the world and design the life that I wanted. Now, for the last 2 years, I've helped over 100 therapists do the same with my home health accelerator program, where I help PTs start and scale home health therapy companies. So if you're working in outpatient right now, overworked, underpaid, grinding to break 6 figures, I want you to know there's a better way. And if you want to get into home health, or you're ready to start and scale a home health therapy company, I want to help. There's a link in my description in this video to book a free strategy session to discuss where you're at right now and where you want to get to. So book a call to discuss if you'd fit the criteria to join the Home Health Accelerator. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe so you see my future videos.